Greetings, one and all, and welcome to the first ever Fellobrabers Social Podcast. I'm your host, Davar, and today I am joined by my good friend, Frobman.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you enjoy your stay here.
I hope they will. So today's subject, since the release of Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, I thought it'd be high time we talk about Kojima and his history and what his contributions to the video game industry, so to speak. I thought, and Frobman was the only one who was able to take the call, which is
the
good.
only one who knows a bit about Kojima.
While I only have passing knowledge of him and his works, though I am familiar with him in some ways. He's a very interesting person, I find Kojima is. It's very hard to discern where he stands on certain facets of life, I would say.
I'd say he's the most peculiar person in video games in general. There's no other person like him in both video games and other things in general, basically.
Yes, I mean, he first started out life in really as just trying to get into the video game industry. Before he wanted to become an artist, apparently, from what my research tells me, but he never pursued that for reasons involving financial situations and family.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, so it kind of makes sense. But the weird thing is, that I find about him, is that he has this obvious love for films and movies. That's no secret, because everyone on the internet brings this up, that Kojima has a love for movies, and especially American ones, well, from the West. So, that's kind of an interesting facet to him, he has this love and obvious means to direct movies, but yet he chooses the video game industry, which is kind of a weird thing when you think about it that way.
No, I guess back in the days, like, video games are kind of new, kind of wide open, and it's like, not a lot of people are doing it, especially not a lot of people admit they were doing it. It's probably what's the word, got him interested into checking it out himself and trying to do something about it.
Yeah.
Because when you got something new, and you're a kind of creative person, you probably want to do something about it. Like, look at YouTube. It's a pretty new platform, and there's all these people who are trying new different things, and other people follow them. So I guess that was his stance with video games back in, like, the 80s, I guess, or the 70s.
Yeah, so Kojima came in at the time when Nintendo was starting to steam through the video game industry, basically saving it from the crash. Well, from the aftermath of the crash, apparently, from what I gathered.
Yeah, the video game crash of 83, 85.
Yeah, I just forgot the year. I'm terrible with dates. But
yeah, there were lots of console games and arcade games, but with the introduction of the Nintendo Entertainment System or the Famicom and Mario Brothers and what kind of things can be done with video games in general, that basically saved video games.
It's funny you say Mario Bros. Because that is actually the exact game that inspired Kojima to go into video games, next to a visual novel game that involved a murder mystery, and which had a very deep story, apparently, from what Kojima has said.
I can believe that.
Yes, he was inspired by those two games, and he decided to go into the video game industry at that point, which was... I never pegged Kojima as basically finding inspiration in Mario Brothers of all things, because it's so simple compared to what he would do, especially with the games he would try to come out with, they aim a bit very high, more than the systems can handle sometimes.
Yeah, Mario Brothers inspired a lot of things. I'd imagine maybe like Castlevania or some Mega Man or even Sonic in just terms of speedruns. But yeah, it's very different kind of games Kojima's done, though. Maybe not how he started to begin with.
Though mind you, though, Metal Gear was the first game he worked on, though, I believe, if my research is correct. It was on the MSX2 he first started on.
That or Penguin Adventure, in which he was assistant director.
Oh yeah, he did start off as an assistant director, didn't he? Because at first he wasn't getting his ideas weren't being recognized.
I'm just looking through Wikipedia here.
Yes, I actually took a look through that earlier. Just to bone up, so to speak.
Next game he was the writer-director for was called Lost Worlds, with an A instead of an O, but that was cancelled in '86.
Yeah, I don't think that counts, really. But it's interesting.
But the following year he did Metal Gear, so...
And after that, he did one game that called Snatcher.
Oh yeah, that's a cult classic.
Yeah, Snatcher is definitely the game that is, I would say, is his homage to the game he was inspired by, I would say, from the looks of it, just based on the fact he's in the same genre. I believe it's the same genre, because they both were visual novels with a bit of adventure to them.
Oh yeah, and some mysteries. It's also got some Blade Runner influences. In a sense, is look at the guy wearing the trench coat and everything. He looks like Harrison Ford in Blade Runner.
Yeah, and not to mention Snatcher and Police Noughts, which is another game he worked on years later. Both share this anime-style aesthetics that he would only have partial inspiration from.
And characters who cameo in Metal Gear games.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. There's a lot of references to his past works, namely Police Noughts and Snatcher and Metal Gear, especially in the first PlayStation game, I believe. But I think they were removed in the GameCube remake. I believe so, anyway. Don't count my knowledge on that one.
No, they referenced Zone of the Enders when Otacon was talking about anime.
Ah, yes.
The footage they showed was from a Zone of the Enders game.
Yes, another game series I only have partial knowledge of, just because my best friend Demonox has played one of them, at least, so I know what the game is about, but I don't know it fully about the story and such. But he was mainly a producer-designer for those games, I believe.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, because over the years he seems to switch between being directors, producers, writer, and game designer, depending on which game he works on.
As you do with all creatives, you kind of like want to focus on one thing in one way, or focus on other things another way.
Yeah. Though, no matter what part he plays, you can definitely see whatever game he works on. You can see that Kojima style, whether it's overcomplicated plot lines and, and overly general how things are presented to the player.
I see you like to play Castlevania. Still don't believe me? Put the controller on the ground. Now watch me as I move it.
Yes, that's another thing. I actually do love that part about Kojima, actually. Because, say what you will about Metal Gear Solid, I for one, I'm not a fan of the overcomplicated plot line, but because and the overly long cutscenes, but I do enjoy the aesthetics of the game series of Metal Gear Solid, but I also love the fact that anytime he brings out a new game, that there's always some weird, quirky humor or he's trying to do some interesting things with the technology he has at hand. Metal Gear Solid being the exhibit A of this, where he tried many different things to immerse the player.
What he did do so in first Metal Gear, in which after you rescue everybody and it's closing to the end of the game, you get called by Big Boss. He goes, Snake, come in, the mission is over, switch off the game. And he keeps trying to make you switch off the game, but if you keep on going, you'll find the Metal Gear to fight, and you find out that he was the real final boss of the game. So that's the first example of breaking the fourth wall and trying to get the player be immersed into the game more so.
Yeah, and involve trickery in some cases, which he's not a stranger to. That being his first time, I believe, he did this to anyone who played his games.
Metal Gear Solid, some of the stuff is partially anti-piracy measures. First one's like, what's the codec number again?
On the back of the case or something, or manual or something.
Yeah, back then, if you pirate a game, you're not going to bother pirating the images of the box. So it's like, okay, I've got to play this game I didn't pay for, and play... Oh, what do you do? Oh yes, look at the back of the box. Back of the what?
Yeah.
I don't have the box. Then, like, days later, okay, I found a picture of the box, and now I'll be able to play the game more. And then later on, like, put the controller down, make it move. Ha, ha. It's like, what? And I can't beat this guy. What do I do? Oh, you have to put the controller in the player port, second player port. Like, what? I'm playing this on a PC. How am I supposed to do that? Yeah.
Oh gosh, I remember that first time happening when I was told to put it in the second part. My mind was blown by that, because then again I was like, what? I'm trying to remember how old I was back then. It was the first Metal Gear on the PlayStation was like released back in... I'm quickly checking the Wikipedia myself just to...
98.
Yeah, 98. So I was like 11 years old, I believe, at the time. I think I was 11. Don't count my memory. My memory's terrible when it comes to that sort of thing.
Well, just see how old you are, and then subtract and add from years and all that, and then you'll find out how old you were.
Ah, Kojima calculations. I should have known. That was my true age.
Yeah, those are some of the first instances of immersing the player in some ways. And there were lots of secrets here and there.
It's kind of strange, actually, that I think about it, that when you say secrets, there actually are quite a fair few, especially raunchy ones, or even ones of Japanese models, female ones to be exact.
Go to a certain place as fast as possible and you see Meryl in her underpants. That's one secret.
Yeah, I remember that was actually kind of weird. Meryl actually was like, you could catch her twice without her underwear. The first one being when you're in the air vents and she's in prison, and if you leave so many times and re-enter and recheck on her, she will actually do different poses and things, and if you go out enough times, she will be doing push-ups in her underwear.
Well, she is exercising a lot. I can imagine getting hot and sweaty.
Yes, it makes sense, but it's also kind of gives you a feeling that Kojima loves to put those kind of secrets in for fan service, but it's like it's not intentionally there. It's like something extra if you're a player that knows what they're doing, or if you're just intentionally looking for secrets in the game.
Yeah, one includes with Mei Ling. If you say you're not going to save like 3 times, the 4th time she'll refuse to save your data at all.
Yeah, not a very good idea when the only person that you require to save is not going to save your game.
Metal Gear Solid, while it does remix a lot of things from the first 2 Metal Gear games on the MSX, namely Metal Gear 2. It does do a lot of different things here and there, like how you fight certain bosses and how you use certain keys. Like, you only have the one key, you have to put it here to turn it blue, and put it here to turn it red, and go back here and there, and other things.
Mind you, though, when you say that, I definitely do know that he definitely had interesting ways to, in the first game especially, on the PlayStation, that, which is the only one I had any, true experience with, just because me and my cousin would play that a lot together when we were neighbours. So it was actually quite intriguing to see what would happen, and basically you had to handle every situation differently, especially bosses.
Mm-hmm.
They're always the most interesting part, I find, the bosses, because rather than just being nameless faces or just general bosses as we come to know, Kojima actually did try to instill every boss with a certain character and personality that we would associate with them.
Hand to hand, the basis of all combat. Only a fool trusts his life to a weapon. Do you remember, Snake? Hurt me, Snake. Hurt me more. Grey Fox.
You definitely do remember a lot of lines, don't you? From that.
When it comes to Metal Gears, well, I never played a single Metal Gear game, just watched stories, but when it comes to all the Metal Gear games, I'd say one is at least the peak in terms of story, because it's not too complicated or too simple. It's basically just right, and it has a lot of memorable moments. My name is Revolver. Ocelot. This is a covert for their best gun. Snake, do you like my sunglasses? And of course, I just want to ask, do you think love can bloom even on the battlefield?
Oh, that one. The one dialogue that sticks in my mind, really, just because of the overly... you know the ending of Metal Gear Solid on the PS1?
Yeah.
Basically, where you save Meryl and all that, and basically Snake finds out he hasn't got long to live, and they talk about how precious life is and how wonderful it is, and they can, spend it preciously and all that. And it's like they're getting ready to go, but the Snake decides, oh, well, heck, let's talk about 5 more minutes about life and how wonderful it is.
And while with Otacon, they just make a Space Odyssey reference, like, call me Hal, I'm David. Dave and Hal, we make quite the couple.
Yes, I think it's definitely the Metal Gear games are definitely a film buff's dream. Just to look for references to movies of all kinds.
Like Revolver Ocelot talking about his gun, I think is probably a Dirty Harry reference, so don't quote me there.
Yeah.
And a lot of the characters were based on actors' likeness. So, like, Ocelot was based on Lee Van Cleef, and Snake was supposed to look like Christopher Walken.
I didn't see that part, actually, about him looking like Christopher Walken.
Yeah, there are many things like that. I think that's what they initially started with, but
it's not just the characters, though. This will crop up, though. It's basically also in the finer details of the games. For example, in Metal Gear Solid 2, I believe it was that one, when Raiden was about to fight someone, I forget the name of the villain at that point, there's a scene where they have this overly dramatic talk, and then suddenly white doves fly from behind the villain, and that's an obvious reference to the direction style of a certain movie director.
John Woo.
Yeah, John Woo, that was it. I knew it was a Woo in there, but I didn't want to just go like, whoo, something.
Metal Gear Solid 2 was also a different kind of immersion, and
yeah,
as before the game came out, we were all geared to play as Solid Snake, and we just knew Raiden was just this other guy who appears, but once the game came out, you play as Snake and then supposedly dies, and you play this new guy Raiden for the rest of the game, and people are like, what's this all about?
Yeah,
What?
not a lot of people really like that about it, apparently, from what I've gathered from research at the time of it happening, and people still have not forgiven Kojima for that, from what I've heard.
Supposedly a fangirl sent him a letter saying, like, I don't want to play as Snake. He's old and beardy. I want to play somebody beautiful and handsome, and that's basically what Raiden's all about.
Really?
Something like that.
I actually heard maybe it's a mixture of the two stories then, because the story I heard about that is that the whole Raiden being the main character is actually ties into the theme of how technology and digital news and all that can lie to people. And
It's a bit of both.
Yeah, so I'm gonna guess it's a bit of both at this rate. Because I find that interesting that you bring that up. Because
now I'm recalling a developer is talking about the game, is saying like something along the lines, when Kojima said he wanted to make the character Raiden as the main character, he asked to be beautiful and handsome. I thought it was a joke. Then when I asked him again, he said the same thing. I knew he was serious. Then he's telling me about the bosses. One of them was supposed to be an immortal vampire. Again, I thought it was odd, so I asked him again, and he told me the same thing. Then I knew he was actually serious about it.
At this point on, I would not have any clue about Metal Gear Solid, other than the third one is like everyone considers to be one of the few good ones. Well, one of the best, just because of the characters, and you get to play as Big Boss, which is the original Snake. I think it's the original Snake they call him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Naked Snake.
Yeah, and the whole concept of what would people do for one's country and yada yada.
You also fight a guy covered in bees.
Yeah, that's not strange enough, is it?
And an old man sniper who you can either beat him the normal way or get beaten a number of times and have him die of disappointment, or leave your game for a while or move the clock forward and he died of waiting of old age. So
yeah,
there's another odd boss fight against a shorter, calmer, subtler sniper fight compared to Sniper Wolf.
I knew about the clock thing just because it's quite interesting that once again Kojima uses technology in a way to basically mess with the reality of the game, so to speak.
And because it's a prequel, so if you do anything that shouldn't supposed to happen, like kill Ocelot in that game, you get shouted by Colonel saying you created a time paradox.
Snake, you created a time paradox!
Also, if you say Metal Gear Solid 2 is your favorite game when you're starting, you'll start off as Raiden, then go with, hey, how's that mask you're wearing doing for you? Yeah, it's doing great, and just takes it off and like, oh, it's still Snake. Good, not Raiden.
I never minded the Raiden, to be honest. Especially though, mind you, it was a bit jarring seeing him in Metal Gear Solid 4 returning as a cyborg, and then he gets his own game after that in Revengeance.
Revengeance is the hypest game ever made.
Yeah, it's definitely a game I never expected at all to come out, especially with Kojima's name attached to it.
And Platinum Games, who make awesome games altogether. So.
Oh yeah, they make really awesome action-based games. That I really like that about them. And
it also gives us the best summarization of Metal Gear as a whole. It's, why won't you die? Nanomachines, son. That's basically the whole explanation for anything in Metal Gear Solid that doesn't make sense. Nanomachines.
Nanomachines, son. Gonna beat your ass.
There's one of the complaints of Metal Gear Solid 4, in that all the things that didn't make sense. Well, it started with 2, but all the things that didn't make sense and whatever that may have seemed like mystical is like, nope, nanomachines.
It's like more modern excuse for magic. technological excuse anyway.
Basically, yeah.
Let's see. I remember a lot of people really liking Metal Gear Solid 4 just because of the tearjerkers that came out of that one.
And it had the longest cutscenes ever made for the game.
Yeah. Though, mind you, when I first heard of it sounded like as if they were trying to wrap up the entire series.
Well, there's also another problem, because usually every time Kojima ends a Metal Gear game, like, that's it, I'm done. Okay, so we're going to do Peace Walker next. Oh, wait, did I say I'm done? I meant I got one more game to do. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Konami definitely was a bit screwy on his creation, because anytime they revealed they were going to do a new Metal Gear game, Kojima just, it's because it's his baby. He doesn't want anything bad to happen to it. So he feels like he has to actually do the job, because Konami at one point wanted to milk the series of all it's worth.
The most part, some spin-off series, like the first two portable PSP games. Peace Walker was basically the game he worked on, which I guess could say is more canonical than the previous ones. And he was trying to do Revengeance, but it was taking too much time and couldn't figure out the cutting mechanics, and said, "Yeah, I'll give it to somebody else. How about Platinum Games?" Yeah, sure.
Mind you, though, lest we forget that Konami's first attempt at doing a Metal Gear game without Kojima, the non-canonical one that they brought out, if you remember.
Snake's Revenge?
Yeah, that one. The one that everyone kinda looks at it like as if it's like a parasite upon the series that needed to be taken off.
Then again, it's kind of obscure that most people don't even know it exists. I mean, people think Metal Gear Solid 1 is the first game made of the series, while technically there were two games before it, just nobody's heard of them or probably played them.
Yeah.
I mean, Metal Gear Solid, well, it's probably Solid 2, but Solid is the first I've heard of the series, personally, really.
So, he's definitely done a ton of work on Metal Gear, but it's not the only thing he worked on now, was it? Well, I mean, we've already mentioned a fair few of what he's worked on, like Zone of the Enders, and obviously Penguin Adventure at one point.
He did a game series called Boktai.
Yeah, Boktai. That's actually the most impressive one in my view, just because he messed with a sort of system that will I'm trying to think how to explain this, because it's kind of a bit complicated. At the same time, it's very simple.
Basically a game that makes people go outside.
Yeah, because it had, in the cartridge itself, it had some sort of thing that looked for solar energy, as in it looked for the daylight sun, so it would actually interact with your game that way. And that was very ingenious, I thought. It was like, I thought that was the best, innovation I've seen that tried to take the environment around you and put it into the game, so to speak.
Yeah, I played the first Boktai game. It was pretty cool, I guess. Though, living in a country like England, where it's usually never sunny all the time, it was kind of hard to play half the time. But otherwise, yeah, it was a neat game. Like, it's not something I'd say the top favorites or anything, but certainly something I'd say worth a look. If you're in a sunny place, maybe play it on a summer holiday when you're away at a beach somewhere.
Yeah, so that's always the best. That's always the downside. You need a good amount of sunlight. Mind you, though, this game franchise was he was only game designer and producer of those games. So that's an interesting thing to note. Though it mind you.
And then his son asked, "Hey, Dad, can you make it crossover with Mega Man?" Sure, why not? And we had that 2 games of Boktai and the Mega Man Battle Network series, they be able to cross over with each other.
I think it's an interesting thing that Lunar Nights is actually the 4th in the Boktai series, but it didn't but because it was on the Nintendo DS, they had to axe the whole sunlight thing. Though apparently it could still work if you have a past version of one of the Boktai games from the GBA and plug it in the other end of your DS, and apparently it would work again, the system.
I can see how that can work.
Yes, I can as well. That's a very ingenious way to get around that, I thought.
So Lunar Knights generally didn't use the sunlight mechanic, did it?
No, it wasn't at the forefront of the game at the time. It was just something to give you an extra advantage at that point.
Hence the name.
Mind you, though, I believe the last Kojima-based game I played, though, was Castlevania Lords of Shadow, which was the reboot of the Castlevania series.
Yeah.
Tell me, from one Castlevania fan to another, what were your thoughts on this?
It started alright, but meanders like... I think it started like, man, this looks cool, and then meandered on and on. It's like, meh, I'd at least want some kind of silly horror classic Castlevania kind of style to it, like the old games you fight against Frankenstein monster as he looks like from the Universal movies or whatever. And here, like, it's all, I guess, like Pan's Labyrinth more so.
Yeah.
It's like you're fighting creatures that would exist in that world more so than like, look out, 5 movie monsters are guarding the castle. We have to destroy them to defeat Count Dracula.
Oh my gosh, all the Medusa heads!
Yeah, it's like, to me that's more of like what Castlevania is like. It takes in all the horror stuff and other mythology things, but Lords of Shadow kind of takes that but plays it a bit more seriously.
Yeah,
I mean,
to me,
you could say Castlevania is somewhat serious, but at most part it's never that serious either.
Oh no, Castlevania is never 100% serious. If anything, it's only a partially serious one, with just some quirky monsters thrown in, just to add a bit of its own charm to it. That's kind of like a B horror movie.
Yeah, basically,
style.
yeah. Yeah, all of Castlevania's basically B horror movies. Even the more serious ones, they still come off as like B horror movies.
Yeah, especially the dialogue, the wonderful dialogue. And Castlevania Lord of Shadows doesn't have any of that. It's like they took the aesthetics of Lord of the Rings and put the gameplay of God of War and put that together to make a completely...
And Shadow Colossus. Some boss
basically
battle.
all the best games that came out years before, sort of thing, into one game, which kind of just doesn't come off well. The only best points I found were not only the gameplay, which was alright to say it was doing its own version of God of War, but it's also because of Patrick Stewart.
Yeah.
He's great in the game. No two ways about it.
I forget who played Gabriel Belmont, but we also had what's his name? Isaac something or other.
Yeah, I forget that one myself, but
Malfoy's father in the Harry Potter movies for all the young'uns listening.
Ah, yes.
And that one general guy in the Avatar cartoon series.
Mind you, though, the only point in Lords of Shadows I basically was like, what the frick am I playing, was when Satan came up.
Yeah, and that's the guy Isaac plays.
Yeah.
He plays a lot of villains, so obviously he has
it works
to play
for him.
The ultimate one.
It works for him, but it's just, in Castlevania, I was not expecting him, and it comes, like, as a big shock to my system, like, this is not Castlevania.
And then it turns out that the Belmont you're playing ends up being Dracula himself.
Greatest plot.
Spoilers to everyone, but...
I don't think anyone will care. It's like a 5-year-old game at this rate. I mean, yeah, 5-year-old game.
And sequels after it, they basically say you play as Dracula.
Yeah, and Kojima didn't work on that one from what I remember.
Yeah, I never played both the games that came after, but I heard they were not that good, so it's like...
Yeah, I only heard that the second game's only interesting part was whenever you were in the castle, but not much happens in the castle. And then you go to modern day and you're fighting in parking lot after parking lot after parking lot, apparently, from what I've heard. So
The only quirky things I know that happen in Lord of Shadows, if you go through these tunnels, it only goes a top view like in Metal Gear Solid, and it plays a small bit from the theme tune, like dun 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 dun. Then you fight this chef monster, and you get him whacked with a frying pan. That's basically the only things I think. Like Kojima's like, make that bit funny. Okay, is that all? Yes. Nothing else? No. Okay.
I'm surprised Kojima didn't try to add any more than that. Like, let's have a bit of a funny moment with a naked guy.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, Kojima's very odd in the fact that he, in his own way, he tries to make it even on the whole male to female sexual appeal sort of deal.
Well, sure, I mean, look at Snake's butt. It's a very well-toned butt.
Yes, he must have worked 2 hours on that.
There was no Dick Grayson butt, so...
Mind you, an interesting aspect, I think, is sometimes Kojima will actually add himself in the game in some way, either by voice cameos or whether he voice acts a character in the Japanese-only versions of said games.
Yeah.
So, for example, for some reason, Lords of Shadows, in the Japanese version anyway, he voice acts those little chupacabra things that steal your things.
Nah, yeah.
That's a very odd thing for him to put himself voice acting.
And in both Peace Walker and Ground Zeroes, you could actually rescue him and recruit him to your side.
Yeah, it's not the first time that's happened. Oh yeah, you did say Ground Zeroes. That's always an interesting little thing he put in.
And he appeared in a Mega 64 video.
Okay,
in which everybody was trying to sneak into Konami and try being old Solid Snake, and he's just like, hey, that's not how you do it. It's like this, and he goes sneaking in with them. Like, there's definitely a guy who does very quirky things in his games.
Yeah. Mind you, though, the one game I am sadly disappointed has never come to be, and because now basically Del Toro feels very bad that he's tried so many times to get into the video game industry, that Silent Hills got cancelled because of Kojima leaving.
No, I think he said he'd still like to work with Kojima on something, that's probably not video games, which I can understand. I can
understand as well. I mean, Del Toro said he wanted to work on he tried twice already to work on a video game, but sadly it didn't work out for him. But to be honest, I hope him and Kojima do work on something together, because those two minds together would do something special, and Silent Hills was meant to be that. And
as we said, Lords of Shadows did have some stuff that looked like something from Pan's Labyrinth, which is a Del Toro movie, so it kind of shows.
Yeah, it definitely does show. And yeah, it's kind of disappointing to see Silent Hills being cancelled like that. But then again, with Kojima leaving Konami, it's kind of was to be expected to happen, especially when the news came.
Yeah, again, we have no idea what's the reason. Maybe he actually left, or maybe they canned him for something he's done, or...
I've heard 2 stories involving that, but I don't know which one's true, and take that with a pinch of salt. Kojima apparently was either fired because he was being too perfectionist on Metal Gear Solid 5, Phantom Pain, and Konami didn't like that because they wanted the game to be out the door at their pace, which is not Kojima's pace, so they fired him. That is one of the stories I've heard. The other is because Konami are now not wanting to concentrate on video games anymore. They want to concentrate on other things they're making more money from. And because they're not concentrating on video games anymore, they actually treat their game developers like crud, essentially. And Kojima might have left because of that, because Konami were not treating him and the others quite good. Because I heard that, let's put it this way, game developers have been put in positions that they're not even trained for, like security guards and other menial tasks that they're not trained properly for.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been a bit of a backlash, so to speak, especially from people who used to love Konami and their works.
Yeah, in Japan they have this different work ethics, so based on stuff I know. Like manga artists, they basically have to work day till night without a single break just to get a issue done for a week, and then same thing for general workers, in that they work day to night and have to do all these things, with all their effort and stuff, and so there's that kind of stuff in games which people like Keiji Inafune and Koji Igarashi talk about when they're doing their own stuff, like
Bloodstained.
Yeah, Igarashi himself said when he's doing the Castlevania games, when each game doesn't perform as they were before, they keep on given the same budget as the last game, or which they can't do anymore, and if it doesn't sell much, they barely get any profits, and at some point they're like, it's not working out, you should probably work on something else. Like, no, I think people still like these kind of Castlevania games. Nah, based on the previous game sales, probably not. And from Konami's point of view, I can see because they're a business, they're about making the money first and the creative things next. So if a game can sell over a certain number, then it's good for them, and they let people do as they want. If it's not, they're not going to take as many chances. And like as you said, them and other game companies like Capcom and Sega are focusing on other things, mainly the mobile phone scene, which they've been doing stuff more so these days, because the games get downloaded, and there's ads on it, so you get money from that, and the microtransactions. So that's basically where the easier money is from, because people will be less keen to pay $40 on a game and more keen to pay $1 a couple of times on a free game they got. So that's one reason I see it. And with Kojima, it's probably based on what I've heard about Metal Gear Solid 5, which is getting a lot of great reviews and people saying it's perfect, best game yet.
Yeah, everyone says it feels like an ending to the Metal Gear franchise, but yet at the same time it isn't.
Yeah, based on all the things you could do in the game and everything in it, it feels like there's probably a lot of money spent onto this. So
oh yeah, and Konami definitely didn't like all the money going to it, most likely.
Yeah, it's probably okay, Kojima, we'll let you do this Metal Gear game. Okay, I'm going to need this amount of money. I think that's 10 times the budget we normally give you. I know, I just need that much. Okay, this isn't right. I need more money for a better game. This is getting out of hand. Kojima's got too much power. What shall we do? That's probably a possibility, but as far as we know, we don't know. Maybe it's that. Maybe Kojima doesn't like the way they do things. Maybe Konami didn't like the way Kojima did things. Maybe they actually left in good terms. They just don't want anything mentioned about it until the game's out.
As we said before, we can only assume. I mean, especially with Konami, with how they're acting. One person was going to interview Konami. They took him off to the side and said to him, "Whatever you do not ask about Kojima or anything related to Kojima Productions, as in he doesn't exist, sort of thing." That seems kind of unprofessional, don't you think?
Yeah, but at the same time, it's probably the thing people keep asking and asking and trying to perpetuate in some ways and gets out of hand here and there. So even if you say like, oh, Kojima, we did this thing, and then the news will go out and people will be like, oh, so that's what really happened. It turned out Kojima was an alien and they're trying to force him down and trap him, but he doesn't want to do that. Like, where'd you get that story from? I don't know, I heard it from somewhere. It's probably things like that. You don't want things to go all out of control. And the fact Kojima hasn't been out and about until like now, because I know he's done interviews with Greg Miller and Jeff Keighley very recently, so which is basically when Phantom Pain came out. So he was at some kind of silent contract thing. So it's basically like, okay, you leave, you keep it, do your game, get the names, just don't say anything until it comes out, okay? Okay. Probably, like I said, we basically don't know anything of what's going on.
Yeah, like we're both saying, we don't know what's going on, and rumors need to be taken with a pinch of salt, so to speak. So
I don't blame Konami. They say like, please just don't talk about Kojima. Everybody wants to know about Kojima, and people already is more or less decided on what they think went on. So
of course, because Kojima is like the face of Konami, because he was vice president at one point, I believe. So yeah, when you think of Konami, you think Kojima, because he is the guy that, well, I mean, there were other games that were put on the map for Konami, like a lot of different games. So they had a great variety of people, of the best minds. So you have Iga and Kojima. They're like the biggest names attached to Konami as a company. So
and the people behind Silent Hill.
Yeah, those people. So it's not surprising people would be a bit invested in the actual creators rather than the company, if you know what I mean. Psychologically speaking. Yeah,
I believe neither of them are with Konami at the moment. So
no,
that
they're not.
Volumes.
So it speaks volumes that the best people are leaving Konami, and I don't know what the future leaves for Konami, but whatever happens, I hope the IPs will be treated with respect, and personally I would rather they get sold to the actual creators of those games, because I don't see Konami doing much with them, personally.
That or new people handle them, because at the same time it can be a good idea to have some fresh minds, because like Igarashi himself wasn't with the first Castlevania. He joined in when they were working on Rondo of Blood, and Symphony of Night was basically his first game, and that's basically the first fresh take that basically made people focus on Castlevania more so than they did for the past few years. So
yeah, true. But that's the thing, though. Considering that Konami have stated they will continue with Metal Gear even without Kojima, can anyone really replace that man? Kojima has this charm that in the Metal Gear series, it cannot be imitated. So
I'd say Platinum Games did a good job.
Isn't that because Kojima helped out with the story and the other details that were required?
Maybe, but there's some stuff I'd say that are more Platinum Games than they are Kojima, like a ninja, cowabunga, go ninja, go, because I don't think Kojima would be like, do a Vanilla Ice joke here, and it's probably somebody from Platinum, because Platinum are also people who are into Western culture as well.
Yeah,
so.
I do get the feeling that in that respect, Kojima and Platinum Games had equal input on what went into the game, especially for humor.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. I think it's time we end on by saying, what does Kojima's works mean to us and to the community? I think that would be a nice way to end off, don't you think?
Yeah, I'd say he's basically like the top guy people aspire to, because he's done things with games that nobody else thought of doing with games in general. Like Metal Gear was like, this is a game where you're rewarded by being stealthy and not attacking people as much as possible, which is the exact opposite of other games at the time, where like defeating as many enemies and and all that was the reward more so than avoiding them. So by starting that kind of way and building up from that more and more, and also working a lot of messages here and there, like a lot of anti-war stories and stuff about memes and technology and society and all that kind of things. He's got a lot to say as well as a creator and as a person. And at the moment, as was mentioned in Kind of Funny Games, the Greg Miller show, which I recommend people check as well. They say like one thing Kojima could probably do now is like he could go to another publisher and people like, yeah, we'll pay you anything because you're Kojima after all. Or he could start a Kickstarter for a game and like, oh yeah, we'll definitely fund it because it's Kojima. So no matter how things ended with Konami, he's still Kojima basically, and people would still follow his work basically because of the things he's done that nobody else has done before. So I guess that's what Kojima means to everybody.
Yes, you definitely hit the nail on the head. To me, Kojima may not be the best writer, to me anyway, but he has done a lot of fantastic work with technology and tried to incorporate it. Any game he worked on, he always tried something different, whether this would be a gameplay design choice or an actual incorporation of the technology at the time. And I always found that deserved a lot more respect than anything else he's done, because it was like bridging the gap between reality and gameplay that messes with you.
And yeah, he also, as mentioned, he also introduced cinematics in video games more so, and we ended up getting better voice actors in video games since then as well, that made people give video games more seriously, for better or worse.
Yeah, so he's definitely opened the door for a lot of people to try and work on what he has set as the foundation. A very big foundation, might I add, that is very sturdy, but it's definitely a very good one in respects to what he's done.
Yeah. Also, he mentioned about the writing thing. Remember the translator of the Metal Gear Solid game, who was the brother of the late voice actress Mary Blaustein. He said that Kojima was more or less a perfectionist when it came to how things translated and worded, because he wanted things to be translated and worded exactly as how he said it, rather than fluffed things here and there. Because when it comes to translations, you can't just translate everything literally as it is, because the meaning can be lost. And saying things as directly from Japanese to English doesn't work, and you have to do things differently. Like somebody speaking with a Kansai accent, and you just write that normally, it'll just sound like a normal person. Or if you add in some other accent, like a Texan or Southern accent, you'll get that this is a person talking a different accent. But Kojima's like, no, write it like this. Yeah, but the meaning was lost. This is how it must be done. So
yes, he was definitely a stickler for detail in every aspect, especially in what he wanted to say.
I guess this is also why the dialogue from Metal Gear Solid 1 was more memorable than games afterwards, because then it was more strict with the translations, and even the GameCube version, they reworked some dialogue here and there, I believe.
Yeah, because to me the writing can get so too much, really. I mean, I respect him for what he's trying to say, but it's just that he said so much that he could have said it in so few words with a bit more punch to it that way. But then again, a lot of people love him for that, but others do not. So it's like Marmite. It's like Marmite of writing, essentially, for Kojima. You either like his writing or you don't.
We could have also done without the 40-minute long cinematic ending for Metal Gear Solid 4.
Yeah, 40 minutes.
I mean, at best, 5-10 minutes is as long as a long cutscene could go, but 40 minutes is a bit too much.
Yeah, it's like you're asking too much of the player's attention. Dang it.
Though I believe Phantom Pain, they don't have too many long cutscenes. Most of the stories you'd find out through cassette tapes, and there are some cutscenes here and there, especially through the gameplay, but otherwise not as much as Metal Gear Solid 4, which had probably, I don't know, hours and hours of cutscenes.
Yeah. Anyway, we're gone over an hour now, so I believe we should really close up on this, really.
This podcast was as long as a Kojima game.
I just realized that, actually. It's like, we're like the Kojimas of podcasts now. Like,
I wouldn't go that far, but sure.
Oh no, yeah, we would have to go 2 more hours if we're going to go for that.
Let's talk about how love blooms in a battlefield.
Yes, and talk about how precious life is, and and how wonderful it is that people lie on the internet and television.
Snake, what is she fighting for? What am I fighting for? What are you fighting for? You get out of this alive, I'll tell you. Okay.
This is the Fellobrabers Social Podcast, talking about Kojima, and I would like to leave off by saying, whatever Kojima decides to do, I for one would like to, thank you for your years of service to the gaming industry, but also, I hope the future will be bright for you, depending on what you decide to do. And I hope Konami treats the Metal Gear Solid license with respect and not make it a pachinko machine.
That'll probably happen. There's pachinko machines for everything, even Dragon Ball Z.
Yes, but it's...
But what do I know about pachinko machines?
No one knows anything about pachinko machines. They're like...
All we know is they're super popular, they make money,
they gamble.
People love playing with them, so...
And the companies only get a small amount of money back from them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what do we know about pachinko machines?
As for my final words, I first thank you for making me the first guest, even though it's probably the only one who answered, so... Whatever.
I don't regret this one bit. I was just glad that anyone joined.
Yeah, and could join any other time.
Yes.
And as for thoughts on Kojima, he does questionable things. I may not be the biggest fan of Kojima, but I'd be lying if I say I did not respect the man and for what he did to video games in general, whether I agree with them or not. But he most definitely has changed the video game culture a lot in the past years. And he's given me some of my favorite quotes here and there. Snake, like my sunglasses, liquid. And that's where I'm ending it.
Of course. So to you folks, thank you for joining us and for listening to us babble about Kojima, Konami, and just general Kojima works. And if you heard a game other than Metal Gear you'd be interested in playing, then I suggest you go play them if you're interested. And on the final note, thank you, Frobman, for coming on, and people, I would suggest you go check out Roacher Hotel that he's a part of. It's quite an amusing and, dare I say, chaotic podcast.
Yeah, speaking of games, it's basically improv stuff and voicey shenanigans with main host Valero and co-host me and several other guests that include people like Cyberlink 420, X Dark One, Eiley Monty, and other one-time guests like Sparky the Android and Takada 101. So, yeah, lots of fun to be had if you prefer to hear shenanigans for an hour long or so. Yeah, Roacher Hotel.
Yeah, Roacher Hotel, so be sure to check that out if you've got to the end of this overly long podcast. And once again, I thank you all for joining us. And if I do this again, then it'll probably be on a rare occasion where a momentous occasion tends to happen within the industry of gaming, or whatever I feel would be interesting to talk about with my friends.
So will one episode be talking about the Queen's dog?
Oh yes, the lovely corgis. We'll talk about all of them. All
I'm
500.
pretty sure there's some momentous occasions to do with that.
Maybe not all momentous occasions.
Fair enough.
So anyway, we'll be off now. So to all of you, thank you for joining us again, once again, and wherever you are, have a wonderful day or evening, and take care.
Ciao.